perler bead, you need a couple specific things. First, an iron and some parchment paper. So a sheet of this comes with your perler beads usually when you buy it, but I just tear off a piece of baking parchment paper and it works just fine. Not wax paper, but dry parchment paper. I also use a few extra supplies. A hot pad can come in handy. I use a Pyrex dish to hold it down flat as it cools, and sometimes I use a weight to even put on top of that to keep it even more pressed down. And also a surface to iron on. So you might think, oh, my ironing board. But the key to making really consistent looking perler bead characters is having a consistent surface. So my favorite surface to iron on is actually directly on my laminate countertop. If you don't have a countertop that you're comfortable ironing on, you can get one of these flexible silicone baking sheets. This is actually rated to go in the oven, so it's just fine to iron on, and use this as your surface on something hard like a granite countertop. Some people like to iron their perlers just on one side and make it completely melted and have the other side still have the little holes. I personally prefer to lightly iron both sides so that it's completely melded together on both sides look the same, and it's nice and flat and consistent. The more you do this, the more familiar you'll get with your iron. There are always some hot spots, some cool spots, so you'll get more consistent the more you do of these. The trick is making sure the steam is off. You do not want any steam on your iron. All right, so to get started, you're on your surface that you want to iron on. You put your tray with your finished beads on there, and you cover it with transfer paper. Your iron is on and heated at a pretty high level. On my iron, I actually have I don't know if you can see it in there, a Sharpie mark of where I like to have my iron set. So you can see it's in the warmest heat setting, but kind of the lower third of the warmest setting. And then once your iron's hot, you just put it down. I like to work mine in little circles like this. And every now and then kind of move it far enough away that you can see how much is being ironed and see if there are any spots that are more melted than others. Then you can kind of leave those spots alone, focus on the spots that aren't as melted. This is looking pretty good. I still like to have little pinholes in mine, so that's good about there. That was maybe 20-30 seconds, not super long. You can still see little dots in there, but not big holes. And anywhere that there's a single bead, it's fully connected to the bead next to it. That's what I'm looking for when I kind of check the sides. There's a couple spots that got a little bit too melted. That usually will happen, but it's very, very minor over here. These are a little bit flatter than I would have liked, and maybe the corner of this hand too. But this is pretty even. This is about as consistent as you can hope for. So I like to let it cool for about a minute without touching it. You can see the edges of the paper start to peel off a little bit as it cools. So it's kind of like watching a pancake to see when it's time to flip it. When the edge of the paper has kind of separated from the beads, this is where the pad can come in handy. If it's too hot for you to touch, you can kind of hold it and pull the paper off that way. And then your character is whole on one side, but the other side is not ironed yet. I always flip it over and do the other side. You can tell it's starting to cup a little bit, starting to warp right now with just that one side being melted. So while it's still hot, you can put it back down the other way. Now you don't need a tray under it, but you always need parchment paper, or else your beads will melt onto your iron. So then you do the same exact thing you did on the other side. A lot of times the second side will actually melt more evenly than the first because it's already pretty warm consistently, so you don't have as many like cool spots you're trying to get all the way hot. And it doesn't take as long either. It's already almost done here. That looks pretty good. I'm going to stop right there. So a lot of times I will actually mirror my pattern, or if you don't mirror it, you can actually just take a second tray, put it face down, and then flip it over, and then use that to iron your first side. so that the second side you iron is the right side, because it's usually going to look a little better. So now that this is done, I don't wait as long this time because I don't want this side to start warping. So I'll just quickly peel that off and then put I find a smooth spot on my Pyrex dish so it doesn't get like a logo on there, and stick my weight on it. You can also use a sauce pot, a kitchen pot. You just want to make sure whatever you're putting on there is completely flat and has enough weight to keep it from curling. So I usually let it sit till it's completely cool. Honestly, I usually let it sit overnight if I'm not doing anything in a hurry. If you really need to move it, probably, I don't know, 20-30 minutes is okay. Just the longer you let it sit, the better, and the cooler it is, the less likely it's going to warp. So if you want really nice flat pieces, this is the key. Let it sit for quite a while with some smooth weight on it, and it won't warp, and it'll look great. All right, let's see it. Ta-da! Nice and flat, smooth on both sides, pretty consistent level of ironing. It's pretty good.